And what's up, everybody? I'm back with another video, and today I want to tell a story. I told this story in more elaborate detail on the podcast, Strolling and Trolling. You can go check that out. I don't know if that episode's out yet, but it will be coming out soon if it hasn't already. If you want to hear more in-depth detail, plug it in the podcast there, and you go check that out with Jeffy and Miffrey and I, where I basically just talk about the trip the whole time. Oh no, that episode's already out. That episode's already out. I saw 3 Sabaros in Iceland. That was pretty cool. You can hear about all that on the podcast too. So, uh, but this story is gonna hone in near the end of the trip, um, when I got poisoned overseas. It was a big deal, guys. They were trying to kill an American overseas. But fortunately, I lived to tell this tale. So this, if you guys don't know, I took a cruise a little bit back earlier this summer to, the main destination was Iceland. But we also went through Canada and Greenland, too. Now, I'm not going to talk about those stops too much because, again, I talk about them on the podcast. The Canada stops, they're okay. Greenland was really fucking cool. Really had a good time. But of course, this cruise was a little over 2 weeks long. So by the time we get to Iceland, we've been on this boat for a long time. We've been gone from home. After we left Canada, it got really cold. It was in the 40s and 50s, which for July is not typical for where I am. And so, I'm obviously used to that weather, and I had somewhat properly dressed for it. I was still trying to keep the cruise vibe, wearing slides outside, which, looking back, probably wasn't the smartest idea, but what are you gonna do? And going into the last couple of days of the trip, because we were supposed to, after we got off the boat, we were going to spend another night in Iceland before flying home because flights were a lot cheaper that day than they were the day we got off the boat. So this is back like a few days before we were supposed to get off the boat. And I got mildly sick. I got a mild cold that escalated into what could have potentially have been COVID. Never got tested. It wasn't nearly as severe of a case as when I had COVID. I felt relatively fine. I was just a little stuffed up, but it lasted a lot longer than a cold normally does, which screams the vid. But I never got tested, and there was not a big outbreak of COVID on the boat, so I think I was okay. As that was going away, this is the last night we're on the boat, and we're at dinner. And we always, every time we went out to dinner, we always, most nights, I think a couple nights we went to the buffet, but most nights we went to like a nicer place, sit down place. And this particular night, my last non-breakfast item on the boat, I had a sausage platter, like a sausage sampler platter as my main course. And it consisted of 3 different types of sausage, and I don't remember what types they were off the top of my head. I think they were one of them was kielbasa. Is that what it's called? I might be wrong there. I don't remember. All I remember is, one of them was bratwurst. I remember that. And one of them I don't remember because it tasted a lot like bratwurst, but I know it wasn't exactly bratwurst. The other one was a different colored sausage. It wasn't like a gray color. It was more like a reddish orange color. And the menu had the marking on it that it was going to be like a spicier food, and so we pay attention to that. But I had many other foods. On this trip that had that same label on it, says spicy, but it was literally not spicy. I had literally had nothing remotely spicy this entire trip. And so I'm like, okay, how spicy is it really? I mean, we're talking about a big cruise company here that wants to just cover all their bases so they can continue to gouge people. for $15 beers, with the drink package. So I ordered it anyways, because most of the other stuff on there was mainly seafood dishes. And if you know me, I'm not a huge seafood guy. So that's why I didn't get any of the seafood dishes. I did have a couple, but that's a story for another time. Now, I cut into this sausage and I take a big bite. I mean, sausage, what do you expect? Like, I've had so many sausages in my life, I know exactly what it's supposed to taste like. But pretty immediately after, I realized that this is the first time that spice warning was actually needed, because this thing was incredibly spicy. Like at the dinner table, it's like this nice fancy restaurant, and all of a sudden my face turned red and my eyes start to water, and I'm like freaking the fuck out, because this is rivaling one chip challenge levels of spicy, and I have no milk. I'm not in Miffery's basement, so I have no way to scream or figure out anything like that. So I'm like, what the fuck? It was, again, by far the spiciest thing I had on the boat, and it was one of the spiciest things I've ever had in my life. Probably second or third ever, only behind the one chip and potentially this one really spicy salsa that I had, but that was a long time ago, so I'm going to probably put it at number 2. I didn't know they could even make cuts of meat that spicy. It was pretty crazy. But, finished the meal, took smaller bites, and the spiciness wasn't as bad, and then, you go about your evening, Everything was fine. Went to bed that night. Got up the next morning, used up the last of my free internet minutes before we got off the boat. It was super early in the morning, and we were in Reykjavik, Iceland. Now, Reykjavik, Iceland was by far the biggest city that we encountered on the entire trip since leaving New York City way back on day one. It was a pretty big city. More mid-size in American city terms, but for what we had seen on the trip, which has been mostly small remote villages outside of like Halifax, Nova Scotia, which was also about the same size, maybe a little smaller than Reykjavik. But it was cool, I remember like we were walking around the boat one last time, and we were like looking out and like, oh my god, look at all this cool stuff that we're gonna get to explore today. It's gonna be great. Then we get out the boat, do everything on the boat. It's like super early, it's super cold, and we get out the boat. And then we take a taxi to the hotel, and this is where the trouble really begins, okay? I feel like I gotta take a dump. Now, if you know me, I do not have great luck shitting in public places. My body only chooses to really go when it decides to. And so I've been on a cruise ship for the last 2.5 weeks. So things are not, going necessarily super well down there. Obviously, I had shat. I probably would have died. I think the longest I've ever gone without taking a dump was a week. And that almost killed me. Thank you, Burger King, for clearing me out for once. But, it's fine. I hadn't really experienced that many problems, relatively speaking. When we got here, it was pretty bad. By the time we got to the hotel, we couldn't even check into our hotel. We had to drop our luggage off, and then we were going to go out and explore the city and then come back and check in. And then we had a special thing planned for the night. But I go to the bathroom, and I destroyed it. You know what I mean? It was not pretty, and I'm like, okay, this has to be the end of it, right? It's probably the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. My condition only started to worsen. I was now but also having an upset stomach, was now becoming increasingly nauseous. I had a headache, and I was just very tipsy, loosey goosey. We were obviously, walking around town, and my condition was starting to, and we were going into different shops and just walking and doing all that sort of stuff. And we went to like a breakfast place, and we got this like cinnamon roll, and it just looked completely unappetizing. I was trying to drink water, but it wasn't really doing much for me. And then we went around some more shops, and I felt like I was going to just have them having to fucking shit in the lawn somewhere or on the road, which I know would have not gone well. I did not want to be detained in Icelandic jail for shitting on the Rainbow Road that they've got there. By the way, they do have a literal Rainbow Road. It's pretty fucking cool. And I almost shat there. But eventually, then we went to another place to eat lunch, and I destroyed that toilet too. And then they got me a big plate of fish and chips, and honestly, it looked like the most unappetizing thing in the world. Now, realistically, this actually wasn't that bad. It was expensive as hell, but it really wasn't that bad. But I felt bad because they bought me it, and my parents bought me food, and then didn't even get to eat it because I was trying not to die. And I got a bunch of weird looks because I kept drinking water because I was also super dehydrated. Now as well. So I'm facing dehydration, nausea, and I can't stop shitting. Ring any bells about what I might be experiencing? I hadn't quite figured out what it was yet. We'll get to that in a little bit. We keep walking around, and eventually, we walk to the hotel, where then we can finally check in. And we get up to the room, and that's where it really got bad. Because now, instead of it going out the back side of me, it was turning around and going out the front. Yeah, as soon as we got to the hotel, I went to the bathroom and I threw up. And I don't, not absolutely not kidding here. I threw up for about 30 to 40 seconds straight. No stopping. I thought I was going to pass out because I could not breathe. It felt like 2.5 weeks worth of food was all coming out of me at once. I mean, I have never experienced anything like that before in my life. And this is coming off the 999 challenge, where I pretty much made in-body SpaghettiOs. And it was not even close. That was not even close to this. It was... I really wasn't even, like, disgusted. I was just, like, surprised, proud, astonished, even, that I did this. But that's when I figured out what I was experiencing. And what I was experiencing was food poisoning. Now, the reason why I talked about the meal that I had the night before is because originally I narrowed it down to two things that I thought may have caused the food poisoning. That really spicy sausage. Now, I originally thought, okay, maybe it wasn't the fact that the sausage was either expired or caused food poisoning. Maybe it's because it was so spicy and it was working my way through my insides that it was like the one chip and it was fucking up my insides, but my insides were already fucked up because of all the food that I've been eating and the fact that I haven't been home in 2.5 weeks. So maybe that was the problem. But later I did find out, at least I came to the conclusion that it was probably food poisoning from those sausages. They tasted a little funky, but I didn't really bat an eye or anything to it at the time. But now, the other thing was maybe the breakfast I had that morning, which was the only other food that was in me at the time. It was like corned beef hash, some gravy, and a few other things. And even just thinking about that corned beef hash now makes me want to throw up, because we had that. I had literally the exact same breakfast every single fucking day. I was so tired of it by the end of it. And now, even though that probably wasn't what caused this whole problem to happen because there wasn't enough time. It was like an hour and a half, so it was probably the night before. But even so, I can't stop wanting to throw up every time I think about anything breakfast related that I had on that ship. It completely ruined my perception of that entire breakfast foods. No matter what it was, no matter when I had it, no matter how much of it I had, it just completely ruined it. Funny enough, my perception of the sausages is not ruined at all. They still sound edible, not appetizing per se, but edible. But they don't make me want to throw up, like the breakfast does. Anyway, I came to the conclusion that that's what it was. Now, originally, after vomiting what felt like, again, 2.5 weeks worth of food, I finally started to feel fine. My stomach pain was gone. I was obviously still extremely nauseous, but I actually didn't feel that bad. For about 2 minutes, and then the pain came back. And it came back very slowly. And then, but now, remember, our day's not complete yet. We are not hunkering in for the night just yet. We are still in fucking Iceland when this is all going on. So we were planning on going to like a hot springs area. So I was like, all right, I was trying to think whether I was even fit enough to do this at this point, because I'm still incredibly nauseous. I don't want to throw up in the natural hot springs. That's like a huge touristy attraction. As an American, our reputation as tourists is already pretty bad, and now we're going to make it even worse. Do I really want to do that? But I was feeling better, so I felt a little bit better. I'm like, okay. And I really didn't want to miss out on this. It was going to be a huge highlight attraction. It was going to be our last major thing before we went home. I'm like, I really don't want to miss this, right? And so I was like, okay, if you throw up again, you're not going to go, but otherwise you can go, right? I literally went back to the room after they said that and threw up again. But I didn't tell anybody. I was alone in my room when that happened. And that was kind of just kicking off about a 12 to 15 hour cycle of throwing up and projectile shitting everywhere, as well as projectile vomiting. Yeah, I had really bad food poisoning because I was having the shits and the gags all in once, which I don't think you're supposed to have both. I think you usually get one or the other. But I had both, on top of the fact that I was still recovering from a cold, on top of the fact that it was potentially COVID. I had the trifecta going on. I was just living large. I want to bear in mind to you that this was like our 4th day in Iceland. I had been fine up until the day we got to Iceland. The day we got to Iceland is when I started to feel like I had a cold. So I think this is Iceland's fault. Those Icelandics, your sheep and beer and what else are they notable for? Oh, they have a Hard Rock Cafe. I'm gonna blame it on Hard Rock Cafe. I'm gonna blame it on you, Hard Rock Cafe, or the Penis Museum. How about that? I'm gonna blame it on that instead. Yeah, I was not doing hot, but I still didn't want to miss this. So I went and still did it. We got to the place and we had to change and do it like a shower so that we were, because we don't want to fucking make the thing dirty. It's a natural water thing. They don't have like filters and chlorine and shit. Natural spring. And we were getting ready to change, and the stomach pain was just too much to bear. I was in so much pain. I'm like, I cannot do this. I was in so much pain. I just kept having for the next 2.5 hours about just sitting on the couch, completely out of it. I was in so much pain. I ended up throwing up again, projectile shitting again, and I'm like, bear in mind to you, I have not had anything to eat since breakfast, right? So there is, at this point, you would really think there's nothing left in me. Yet my body still kept finding things to get out of me. And I'm like, where the fuck is this all coming from? You know, like, did I really not shit well for 2 weeks that they've got all this backlog shit built up that's just saying, okay, now that we're off the boat, now that our precious stockbroker partners, Norwegian Cruise Line, now that they don't have to deal with it, now you're gonna release it all. Now we're just gonna, it's like, you're gonna dump it all for the turtles, dump it all for the Hard Rock Cafe. You know, that's what it felt like. And it was like cold, and at one point they just like put a thing in front of the door to hold it open, and it started raining and blowing wind into there, and like I'm just like there with my jacket on, and I'm like freezing my ass off, and like again I'm still super dehydrated, so I am in now I'm in a cycle of where I'm drinking a ton of water to try and rehydrate myself, and then I end up throwing up because my body cannot process even a little bit of water at this point. It can't handle anything, it can't even handle fucking air, feels like. So I'm dealing with that, and finally we leave. It was that was the longest I've ever been there. Some guy even was like, "Are you okay?" Like he almost called an ambulance. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just fucking shitting my ass out and dying over here, but I'm okay." Because the last thing I needed was to get taken to an Icelandic hospital, and you know have that become a whole fucking saga. So that was great. And then eventually we leave, and the bus ride back was, again, super excruciating. I threw up again, though again I have nothing left in me at this point, so barely anything came out. And we finally get back to the hotel, and I just pass out in the bed. Like I am just completely out of it. I pass out, and I'm just like, fuck this. I'm going to bed. I wake up, and I think it was like, we got back around like 6:30, 7 o'clock, I think it was. And then maybe like 10:30, 11 o'clock, I wake up, and I was passed out. So I wake up thinking it's like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I find out it's only 11 p.m. I'm like, great, this is how this night's going to go. And it was just a constant cycle of like getting up, you get something to drink because again I'm fucking dehydrated, and then you gotta take a shit, and then you go back to bed, but then you're dehydrated, so you take a drink, then you gotta take a shit, then you get dehydrated, so you gotta take a shit, dehydrated, take a shit, dehydrated, take a shit, dehydrated, take a shit. I needed to have like a bed that you could also be like as a toilet, and then just have a fucking IV drip of saline going into my body. That's what I needed. Somehow I get a semi-competent amount of sleep, not before shitting myself in the bed, which is not something I am probably not super proud to admit, but it is important to the story because I've never done that in my life before, and I don't plan on doing it again. Even when I was a fucking toddler, I never shat the bed, okay? If I shat myself, I was awake doing it. I never did it in my sleep, okay? I lost that track record in Iceland, of all places. So now I have to say that I've never shat myself on U.S. soil, which is not nearly as impressive. Okay, just gotta say, not nearly as impressive of a thing that I hold as a title. Granted, I'm not putting that on my resume, either way, but put it here, and now I lost that title. So the crown comes off. I am no longer a professional shitter. That sucks. But the morning comes around, I throw up one more time, and my body still can't process much, but then I finally feel something that I hadn't felt since we left the boat. Hunger. Yeah, I lost my appetite completely, and I finally start downing some pretzels. They didn't taste that bad. To be honest with you. We had those pretzels for a long time because we got this big bag of them, and it took a long time to finish them, but we ended up finishing them eventually. But then, we had to wait for our flight, and we were planning on doing a little bit more shopping in the area because we had to check out of the hotel, and then we were going to go do some shopping. Then we were going to get in a taxi, go to the airport, and go to our plane, go home. But I'm still super nauseous. I'm much better now than I was yesterday. The worst of it, I could tell you, is not behind me, but close. The grossest of it all is behind me, but not the worst when it comes to pain. And now we spent the next few hours. I'm slowly munching on some pretzels. I'm finally able to keep water down, and I'm just sitting on a park bench in front of a church. And it was Sunday, so there's a lot of people around. We're just sitting there, people watching. It was pretty fun to people watch. Gotta be honest with you. There's some interesting characters in Reykjavik, Iceland. Some pretty cool people, and a lot of tourists that we got to. Fellow tourists, I should say, because we were also tourists that we got to watch. And I got to miss out on one of the things I was super excited about for Iceland. I missed out on the hot springs, and I didn't get to try an Icelandic hot dog because my body couldn't keep anything down for the last 15, 16 hours. So I didn't get to eat an Icelandic hot dog. I was super excited to do that. What the fuck, Norwegian? I'm blaming it on Norwegian. Fuck it. I'm blaming it on Norwegian and Hard Rock Corporation. Those are the two. I'm blaming you both. You gave me tainted sausage, and then you made me shit my brains out. I expect that settlement very soon. But anyways, eventually we go to the airport and we get on the plane, and I'm like, okay, the worst of it has to be behind me now. I was finally feeling better. I wasn't nauseous anymore. That was until we took off. Yeah, being high up in the air on a plane, especially one that we encountered a decent amount of turbulence. Well, turbulence. I didn't really feel much of the turbulence. We just they kept putting the seatbelt light on, and I never buckle my seatbelt because I didn't know if I'm gonna need to shit my brains out in the next 2 minutes. So I would just not put it on, and they never really said anything about it, and it really didn't matter because I didn't feel any of the turbulence. But then I ended up blowing up the toilet on the plane too, which only made my situation worse. I was so nauseous I couldn't even. I was trying to watch a movie. I ended up watching one movie. I was planning on doing more because it was a 6-hour flight that we were on. I was planning on watching a good amount of movies. I only got through one, and I barely got through it because, I was in so much pain. I was so nauseous. I couldn't look outside. I was trying to, and then I tried to sleep, and I slept for a little bit, and then something woke me up, and then I was in more pain, and then it was excruciating. Food poisoning at high altitude like that, do not mix. Anybody who gets Denver, Colorado better have the best quality control when it comes to their food, because God forbid anybody gets food poisoning in that city, because you're already at a high altitude. I can't imagine what their plumbing system is like. I cannot imagine what their doctors must go through seeing people with food poisoning come through, because that has to be just some of the worst pain ever. No wonder that they have no wonder that people there do a lot of pot and drink a lot of beer. I would too. If I was in that much pain, I'd find a way to get out of it. If I have that pot to get out of it, I would do it. Fuck it. Anything to make me, not want to die. After what felt like an eternity, we finally landed back in the United States, and I don't know if anybody else has ever done this, but there's a huge thing about people's they clap when the plane lands. What the fuck are you doing? Well, I clapped when the plane landed. When they said welcome to Detroit, I went, woo, let's go, yeah, baby. I'm on U.S. soil, and now I can finally go to my own home and shit my brains out some more. Yeah. And I don't know, I may very well be the first person to ever clap for landing in Detroit, Michigan on a plane. I very well might be. And after getting off the plane, I had a craving for one thing and one thing only. Yeah, I finally had a craving for something. I didn't really even have a craving for those pretzels. I just ate them because I was hungry and needed something and didn't want to eat meat. But I was craving a cola, more specifically Coca-Cola, which after an eternity of waiting for our luggage to arrive, walking what seemed like 3,000 miles from where the plane landed to where we could finally exit the terminal, into the scorching Michigan heat, which we were not prepared for because we had been hovering around 50 to 55 degrees for the last 2 weeks. And now we were finally going back into what was the middle of a fucking heat wave in the mid 90s. And then we had to take a tram back to the car, unload our stuff, load it again, get in the car, deal with traffic getting out, finally find a McDonald's, and then get a Coke. And I tell you what, that was the best damn Coke I've ever had in my life. I meant it. It was awesome. Finally something that took away the pain. Even if it was only slightly, it took away the pain. Thank God. I was like, hallelujah. I have never wanted to praise the Coca-Cola company more than I have now. But here I am. Woo. And so it was good. And I also just felt better being on American soil and being like home. I don't know. You get home. Maybe I was just having a really severe case of being homesick. Who knows? Who the fuck knows? And I don't really know. But then eventually, then we had to drive home, and the Coke was amazing, and had some other snacks to try and fill myself up. But the effects of this now, after getting off the plane, I can safely say the worst of it was completely gone. Thank you. I never threw up again after that morning in Iceland. But the lingering effects took a lot longer than I thought. It was a good week and a half, maybe, before the effects finally kind of worked its way out of my system. I did not shit normally for a week. It was bad, and and for the first few days returning home, I went back to work the next day, and I didn't eat lunch until 3:30 p.m. and I only did eat lunch after that because I realized I had it and I didn't want to get a headache. But I was not hungry. I did not have a solid appetite for another few days. So any weight that I gained on the cruise, I lost it all. Except for a pound. I gained a net total of 1 pound despite going over on my calorie count every day on the trip, except for one day, middle of the trip, where I was pretty much broke even, and then the final 2 days where I ate barely anything. So, I guess there was some positive to come out of it. I guess. Now, safely say now, my appetite is back. I mean, I wasn't even craving Taco Bell when this was done. I always crave Taco Bell. I was craving Little Caesars, though, which was weird. I had Little Caesars long after the effects wore off, but I wonder if I had it right after we got back, how good it would have tasted. I'm very curious about that, but the effects are gone, and that was bad. It was rough, and I can safely say that while I still very much enjoyed my time in Iceland, I had a lot of fun, kind of seeing the beautiful mountainscapes, and just this was really the only time that I've ever been truly out of the country. Like Canada, yeah, I've been there a few times, and yeah, that was part of this trip, and yeah, we went to Greenland, but Greenland was mostly nature. It was scenery. There's just little villages there. With Iceland, in a few cities, but mostly, Reykjavik and other stuff like that, I was really excited to just explore the, how regular life goes outside of the United States, really outside of North America, because a lot of stuff in Canada is very similar to how it is in the US. Not everything, but a lot of things. And I didn't really get to enjoy it a whole lot because I had potential COVID followed by extreme food poisoning that ruined all 4 days that I was in Iceland. And yeah, I got to see some cool stuff, and yeah, I still get to experience some awesome stuff, and I loved every second that I was there, except for the time that I was dying on the toilet, which was about a third of the time that I was there. And yeah, I still look back on the trip fondly, having returned. It's been a little over about a month and a half now since we returned. But I feel like I have to go back just to redeem myself. And I don't really know if I want to go back. I probably will eventually because I really do kind of want to go to that penis museum because I just want to see how fucking wild it is. But other than that, like, I don't have much reason to return. Iceland's just kind of one of those places where you say, yeah, you've been there, and you kind of don't go back. And I feel like I missed the shot because my shot was tainted. There was a foul. He got hit on the arms. Shot was being taken, and no call was made. That sucks. Anyways, that's the story. This went a little longer than I thought, but there it is. For those of you who have never experienced food poisoning before, I don't recommend it unless you want to lose some weight, because it is a good way to lose weight. I was pretty positive I was going to have gained a good 5, 6, maybe even 10 pounds, and I gained barely 1. And I've lost that pound now, plus a little more. So take that as you may. For those of you who have experienced food poisoning, though, I'd love to know your experience. If it was just as bad as this or worse, I don't know how it could be worse without like needing immediate hospital attention. But also, was it better? Did I just get a bad case? Did I experience something worse than this? I'm curious to know because I've never had food poisoning before, but I have narrowed it down to this being food poisoning. So with that in mind, let me know your thoughts about this in the comment section down below. Yes, this was a grosser video, but it's an interesting story, and I love telling interesting stories. And especially with us reviving the podcast, I don't want interesting stories to be gate kept from here just because, now we can put them on the podcast with other stuff that I wouldn't normally say on this channel just because it's a bunch of small talk. But I felt like I needed to tell that here. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for much more amazing content. And until next time, don't get food poisoning, don't eat sausage, and more importantly, don't eat corned beef hash. And until next time, fuck you, Norwegian. Fuck you, Hard Rock Cafe. Bye.